All right, recording. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second cohort of 2.0's Mastermind group. My name is Julian. I'm your host and founder, and I just wanted to begin with a quick share of what this is all about, a bit of an introduction, so opening words, and then we're going to get into a short introduction of each of our speakers on this panelist today, and then we'll get in with questions. So let's do it. 2.0 is back. 2.0 is a platform that networks professionals in the health, wellness, and fitness industry. And it was birthed out of the notion of making the industry more of a community, which is our topic of the day. I'm going to just read verbatim words that I wrote that ushered in the first mastermind grouping, which was a month ago. And here it is. We millennial change makers in Canadian fitness, health, and wellness are investigating the recultivation of community within the industry post-pandemic. It left us fractured and forced us to fend for ourselves and our tribes. Now that we've been stable for 2 years, it's time to reconnect the tribes and commune as one. Our focus is to explore topics such as longevity, health span, technology, prevention, and discuss implementation strategies for a healthier future. Our mission is to reconstitute a community at large for the betterment of our industry's well-being and the future of Canadian citizens. Every month, we'll be hosting a mastermind group gathering, record it, and upload the conversation to YouTube. We are currently incubating this revamp and building momentum towards a new approach for 2025. We hope you'll join us for the journey. So with that being said, I would like to welcome our speakers today. What we're going to do is just, I'm going to call you out, and then you're just going to share your name, who you are, your background, and I think it would be nice to get right into our show and share, which is basically if you have a trinket, an object, a thing that represents community, that would be fantastic to just give a little share about that. Sound good? Thumbs up?
Sounds great.
Cool. And also just housekeeping rules, just when it comes to virtual stuff, when you're not chatting or talking, please be appreciative if you mute your mic. And for anyone that's not on the speaker panelist, we'll just ask to take the camera off, okay? All right, so let's start off with, I think it was Quentin that showed up first. So Quentin, hello.
Jeez. What's up? I'm Quentin, also known as Q. I have a number of different sort of hats that I wear in community spaces. I volunteer, I have a not-for-profit, ultra relay. There's a ton of things, and I'm sure we'll touch on some of them. My show and share is this hoodie right here, and it represents one of the organizations that I volunteer with and mentor at called The Kickback. They have a running club that I'm a part of, and it also says a little bit about me because I have a weakness for Heather Gray, and I have a ton of Heather Gray sweatshirts, and so this is one of my faves.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Next up, Celia Lopez.
Hey, everybody. My name is Celia Lopez. I'm the founder of a company called Placemade. We're for health and fitness inspired co-working space, specifically designed for independent health and fitness professionals to service their clients. Show share, I actually forgot it in the bedroom, but it's a Dream Big, Work Smart t-shirt, Placemade branded. And that's just pretty much our motto because we really encourage all of our independent health and fitness professionals to dream big, but also do it in a way where they can work smart out of our spaces. And so that is a tried and true saying that I like to say to all of our guys, our members, and yeah, it's something I want to share with you guys.
Amazing. I love when there's mottos that come along with mantras. It just adds so much more depth, and it's so well concisely thought through. So love that. Next up, Cassie.
What up, squad? My name is Cassie Day. I am the founder of a fitness community called All Day Fit. I've been in the health wellness space for 10 years now. I was toying between two objects, one being a hockey stick and one being this book right here. I'm going to go with the book. So this book's called Contagious Culture. And I'm going to share today specifically because I really think that community is built off the culture that you build. And this book, I heard the author's name is Anise Cavio, has been a huge guide and mentor in my life in helping me design and create an amazing community.
Oh man, so excited to tap into some of the gems from that book. Thanks for sharing, Cassie. Miranda, you're glowing.
I'm just so happy to be here with Cassie. It's great.
Yeah. Tell us about you.
Well, I got this professional microphone because I've lost my voice. But yeah, I'm Miranda Popin. I have been a hormone nutritionist with a bunch of other certifications involved with that for almost the past 8 years. I am the founder of the Period Lab, where we are really changing the narrative around menstrual health. We are actually trying to teach everybody that the word symptoms no longer carries the same weight as your period. So teaching everybody to have symptom-free cycles, and we do this from a full 360-degree approach. So we're focusing on your nutrition, supplementation, movement, even your orgasm routine, your stress management routine, your sleep routine. We're working with the whole entire person that you are. And because I am an online platform, we don't really have anything specific that is handheld, but we work off of a platform called Floka. And if I could share my screen, I would. But Floka is this whole entire platform that I have teamed up with, that we have created for everyone to go beyond just period tracking. It's here's how your whole entire life impacts your cycle tracking app. Everything from your fitness, your sleep, to your heart rate, your temperature. It's the coolest thing. And the reason why I feel like this cultivates community for us is communication and education, that we're not gatekeeping, that we are just trying to make this a supportive and comfortable place to talk about everything, even bowel movements. So
could you type the Floka in the comment section so we have it?
Yeah, totally.
So cool. Thanks, Miranda. Next up, Adam.
Hey guys, I'm Adam Lewis. Yeah, a little background. I used to lead community and growth at Othership, and since leading then, have taken on some other initiatives, and my passions around building community in other areas of the health and wellness space. I used to be a former athlete and have a deep passion for all things personal growth, human development, and a lot of that has transpired into other community building initiatives I've inserted myself into, including a men's community in Toronto called Men's Alchemy, and leading into a men's festival I'm actually hosting at the end of the month called Man Camp. It's a celebration of masculinity and is there to support and honor all men in doing the work and cultivating their mature, conscious, masculine essence. So to any men listening, open invite for you to check that out at mancamp.ca. And all this is really a devoted act to my dear love for humanity and all things that make us human, which so much of it comes into connecting through community, through each other. And my show and tell item you'll meet is this little guy right here. And his name is Durst the duck, named after Fred Durst of Limp Bizkit. And Durst to me so much represents community because there's this song called The Rubber Ducky that I heard in a ayahuasca medicine circle once that became very contagious for me to listen to and laugh at and bring through in medicine. And then I learned that song and brought that to another medicine circle I sat in. And they all caught that rubber ducky. And now everybody gives me rubber duckies because it's hilarious and it brings joy and laughter. And so much of what community means to me is creating spaces for people to learn more about themselves that they can then share with others, and safe spaces to find those parts of us that we didn't even know existed. So Durst the duck definitely captures that for me.
Amazing. Oh my God. It's so cool to hear everyone's interpretation of the show and share community. And I love yours. It just brings, you can't not smile at a duck. Last but not least, Mixie.
What's going on, everybody? My name's Miggs. My background was a basketball player, and I rediscovered my love for fitness in the pandemic. I'm similar to Q, where I wear a few different hats. I'm a spin instructor, I run, I teach boot camps, but running was where I really discovered my love for fitness again in the pandemic. After finishing playing basketball, got into party planning, eating a lot of food, late nights, a lot of tequila, gained a bunch of weight. And in the pandemic, starting that run journey, I was able to figure out, I feel a lot better. And it wasn't just about losing weight, but it was about how I felt. And I wanted to share that with friends. So I called up some friends of mine and kind of forced them to come run as my accountability partners. But from there, birth community. And from there, I was able to found Me Versus Me, which is just a fitness community just to promote movement. And one of the biggest slogans or our mantra is really just get your 30 and 30 minutes of movement in every day, no matter what it is. For my show and share, I got this medal here. I don't know if you guys can see it. It says Riot Relays 2024. I've been a part of many different ultra relays or relays in general, where we've run various instances from Toronto to Montreal, LA to Vegas. I've been part of some of Q's as well with the Escape team. And I wanted to do something that was a little bit more accessible for people. And that wasn't necessarily geared around just a race, but more of just a run and a vibe and an opportunity for people to connect just because of what I felt in those moments, connecting with teams. And we did a run from Toronto to Blue Mountain. Sounds like it's a long time. It goes by pretty quick. Everybody takes their time, but people were able to choose teams of 6 to 8, and the camaraderie, the sense of community, every team cheering one another on, no matter how they're doing. It was essentially just the embodiment of what community is and just uplifting one another. So that was kind of a proud thing that I was happy that I was able to come to fruition this year, and we look forward to doing it again next year.
Amazing. Wow. It's so nice when people come together and do fitness and movement together, because it's, bringing together through the vehicle of health and achieving goals. So there's a mishmash and alchemy of really amazing things all happening when a relay race is done. So yeah, thanks, Migs, for sharing that. I just had to pause for a moment and just smile at this panelist, because you all are like mind-blowingly amazing at what you do. And for anyone who's watching, who's brand new to this stuff, who's like, well, I just see faces on screens. This crew is like top-notch, high-performing, and have done this kind of stuff for a while. It's like you're rich with experience, lived in experience, you walk the talk, and you also exude that. And there's something really special about doing community work, because you are all not only thought leaders, but action leaders. And you are paving the path, and you're doing things that probably you don't get paid for, because you realize that it's people over profits. You realize that it's community is the one single or biggest antidote to a lot of our issues that we're facing in society these days. So like, let's give snaps to each and every one of us. And the fact that we can come together from all different backgrounds, that's what makes this mastermind really special too, because each and everyone comes at community in a different way. We've got like virtual community, we've got running community, we've got men's group community, we've got fitness, we've got entrepreneur community, we've got, like philanthropic community. There's just so many different approaches. And so to siphon into the next question, and we're gonna just do like, if anyone wants to answer, you can just raise your hand, or you can click the hand emoji as well. But this first one, I'm sure all of you can answer it. We've kind of touched upon it here and there, but what is, like, how would you define community like concisely? And that's a really tough thing. Is there like a quote or I mean, how would you share what that is to you? Adam? Mute.
Always gets me. Yeah, I can just like continue spinning off of what I began to share with Durst is, it's really interesting time to talk about this because like being in the space that we're in, I'm sure a lot of us see the community spun around like all over the internet now. And so many times I see it just leading to like communities, what, cool new companies are just calling their customer base. I think it's something people probably seen and maybe get annoyed by, at least I do, because it's turning community into something transactional, whereas it really is actually supposed to be the opposite of that. I think it's about being relational and how we actually truly and authentically relate to each other. And authenticity is what I believe is to be at the root of any thriving community. And to that definition that I mentioned is, I really think community are a culture of people that give each other permission to realize new parts of themselves that can then be shared with others. So in the way that Curse the Duck came to be. But another example I can share is even at Othership, when I was pouring my heart into just reaching out to all the people in the city I think would totally benefit from the movement we were starting, then how many cool new movements came to be from that, of things like conscious concerts and other cold plunge communities and all these things that organically emerged because people were just brought together to realize their own passions that they shared with others, and then had the permission and liberty to then build out into other parts of their lives. So a very long-winded answer, but I think community is something that does warrant more than a bullet point.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah, relational over transactional. That was huge for me. And also, fellow friends, if you'd like to add on and just like piggyback off of what someone said, feel free to do so, or just add a comment. Okay, let's go with Miranda next.
Yeah, I want to echo that for sure with Adam's response about authenticity, but at the same time, for me, I'm online. So I get to only be as authentic as I want to, which has its pros and cons. For me, within the Peer Lab, I would definitely define community as a shared space for education and connection, where we're trying to make it as open as possible about experiences and supporting one another and actually having access to valuable information without barriers. So there's myself, a hormone nutritionist on the team. We also have a functional medicine practitioner, Dr. Morgan, and we built Floka out with Dr. Brandon Marcello, who is Julian, you would know him. He is a strategy performance director for the military and for what's the big university in the States? But the whole point of this is just how can we give as much information and education as possible without there being barriers, without there being limits. And it's a place where everyone is able to contribute to insights and learn from one another. And the Peer Lab really fosters a sense of belonging by offering not just knowledge, but also making sure that there's practical tools and resources and support, and everyone is feeling seen and empowered to take control over their hormonal health. So this community really thrives on engagement and transparency and accessibility with like collective growth. So yeah, online, like it's just like it's a little tricky to be as authentic and to connect as much as possible. So in a lot of my posts and a lot of how I communicate, from newsletters to stories and clubs and things like that, it's just like, how can I just provide and be of service and give as much information as possible? And in return, there's just been so much engagement, and also like even connection back for me. If I'm feeling down, if I'm dealing with anxiety, I will always share, this is what I'm dealing with, this is how I'm supporting it, and you get love back, which is just always nice. But that's our online community.
Yeah, Brandon Marcello is brilliant. I mean, he's been often guest speaker at Equinox symposiums and Baylor University or something like that. Yeah.
No, it starts with an S.
Stanford?
Stanford University.
Okay. Brilliant mind. Brilliant. Next, Quentin.
Yeah, I love what Miranda said about providing and being of service. That resonates with me. Also, what Adam said about sort of brands like community being like a catchphrase now. It's real trendy to say the word community. And I think I've spent a lot of time, especially recently, differentiating what community is and what it isn't. And one of the analogies I like to think of for community, for me, is this idea of ropes, like skipping ropes. Like, you used to play, the ropes would be spinning and kids would jump in and skip. And there's always people that will jump into those ropes and really quickly, and they're just bouncing around. But there's always those people that are just on the cusp, and you can see their body moving and they want to be there. And events and brands often pop up, they spin the ropes and then they disappear. To me, there's an element of consistency in it. And when I'm looking at community, I think of that person who wants to jump in. And if those ropes go away, they lose that opportunity. The safety that you've created disappears. And it's usually right when they're about to do it that it's the most important. So to me, community is just the idea of keeping those ropes spinning. That's how I look at it. That's my job if I'm creating a community, is to create a space where people can fall into safety whenever, however they authentically feel to. And so a run club, right? People will come, they're gung-ho and they're running, but what about that person who's not really sure? And so to me, I always think about that idea. Out of rope spinning, that's my job. Keep them spinning and let people fall into it. That safety and consistency, to me, is what differentiates true community from events, that pop up and disappear.
Yeah, I love the analogy. I love analogies so much. They just are such a quick way of displaying and describing, defining something that seems complex, and that visual of like in, out.
Oh, and that's how I see it. Like I see Migs every Thursday creating a space. He's spinning those ropes. It takes energy, it takes work, it takes commitment. Sometimes his arms are tired. Sometimes this is a space that is draining, but he's selfless. He's of service, like Miranda said, and he creates this place so that someone else can, when they're safe enough, and build up the safety to fall in. And all the people on this screen, I think, demonstrate that. So, yeah.
Thank you for answering, folks. One shift into that sort of deeper dive is how, and you kind of started alluding into it, is how do you manage community? Because it's like one thing to start, to continue to cultivate, but how do you continue to take care and nourish a community? What are some tips or things that you've done that you've found very successful, especially when the world went upside down with the pandemic? Migs?
I think the biggest thing for me is just consistency. You just got to be there. And I'll just use the run club as an example. I hate cold weather. I don't think I'll ever like cold weather. And I started running in May 2020 when, it was transitioning into spring, into summer. But people would always ask me, are you going to continue running when it gets cold out? And I think just feeling how running made me feel, and how health and wellness and just reapproaching how I look at my own health made me feel, I wanted to continue to show up for people. So I would always tell people, and I still always tell people, I'll be outside even if I'm by myself, because if there's one person that wants to show up, I don't want to not be there for them, because like Q said, there's always people that are on the cusp. There's always people that, it takes them a little bit of time to build up that courage to step into a new environment that may be a little bit unknown. Fitness and wellness and joining new groups, especially as adults, can be intimidating. So what we're trying to do is just break down those barriers and show them, you know what, we'll be here, and we'll be here for you when you're ready. So I think consistency is one of the biggest things.
Did you find that you had a struggle with when pandemic hit and like everything shut down? But how did you maintain that?
I only started in the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
I was born in the shadows.
So when I know I got a few side eyes, and I was new to the industry, and some people are looking at me kind of crazy because you're bringing people together in a time where everybody's supposed to be at home. But I knew just speaking with some family and some friends that people were craving connection, and wellness and fitness was a time where that was the only option that we had, was to run, because gyms were closed. And I thought, you know what, I'll show up. If people show up, they can make their own choice. I'll still run. They don't got to run beside me. They could, create a little distance if they like, but I just wanted to show up for people no matter what.
Great. I'm gonna pop over to Celia, so we haven't heard from her yet.
Yeah. So for us, we launched 3 weeks before the pandemic happened. So I signed that lease 3 weeks before we knew anything was happening. And to be able to open up a space in an industry of work that is very individualized, everyone is their own kind of independent personal trainer or whatever, it created a lot of collaboration and connection that happened organically actually during that time, because a lot of them were suffering. They had no place to go. And for us to provide a space to kind of help foster that, and just being open to kind of that whole situation, because everybody was dealing with something mentally. And so I really had to open my mind to hear different perspectives and hear where people were coming from, and be able to use our space as a place to help foster and develop that community in such a time where our industry was really broken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Collaboration. It's sometimes interesting when we have some sort of downfall or roadblock or obstacle, when in group, it actually bonds people, right? When we have some sort of suffering, we all bond together because we realize to get through it, it's not just one person. All of us together, sticks bundled together is much stronger than a single. Miranda.
Yeah, so I was a figure skater back in the day. I went pro when I was 18. I think that's like prime, like self-centered time. So I actually hated community. And when COVID hit, I was living in Muskoka. I was more concerned about where my competitor was, because I was in the middle of nowhere. And being a solo athlete, I was just like, how am I going to pace myself with somebody? And it was kind of a blessing in disguise, because community was built all through social media, that I was posting crazy amounts of polls, and I would ask, like, I was the ones that was trying to ask questions, and like, what was going on with your period, and what do you do for this, and getting answers and getting engagement and giving tips through social media. We've learned that everybody definitely wants like the quick bites of info that you can apply tonight, and that information has always been great through the show and share, show and tell. Actually think of the all day fit post of you and your partner. You guys did like solo of like modifications of exercises. And I'm like, this is like so brilliant, perfect show and tell example. But now for me, it's just been like through newsletter, I'm realizing more and more people want the real, authentic, the super long posts, the newsletters. So it's just been, how can we just kind of I'm going to sound probably like a broken record, but just how can I serve? How can I give as much information and not gatekeep anything, or if anything, just like spilling our guts and over communicating at this point?
Absolutely. I think that what you do is not, I don't want to say like it's of course very special, but the information's there on Google, right? But it's
limited.
it's not what you say, but how you say it as well, how you interpret it, and then re-put it out there. And also, of course, it's like how you make people feel.
Yeah,
It's
I
really essential.
hated when I was being tossed around from doctor to practitioner and everybody was speaking to me in such an anatomical, formal way that nothing made sense, to the point where I had to go take myself through school. When you are a mom of 3 and you're dealing with all these hormones and your relationship is on the brink of ending because you're so hormonal, you don't have time to take yourself through school. You need something that you can apply tomorrow. So obviously being able to relate and communicate and explain what's actually happening has been the biggest thing that has led to more referrals and more shares and people messaging, hey, my friend did this and so. And it's like, now we're having all the, like, we're trying to now get into in-person events, which is definitely a little challenging. And I'm excited to hear more about you guys, because that's the next steps. Like, how do we get offline and in person?
Yeah. Let's go to Cassie. Break the silence. The goat of community. Let's go.
Thanks. That's a huge compliment. I think like what Meg said like consistency is important, but then also Miranda the goat. Also, even more like on top of like just showing up and holding space, it's like when we are in those spaces, it's being the connector and it's helping people feel seen. So like simple things like using people's names, simple things like introduction over and over and over again between 2 people, finding a common denominator and like being the bridge between 2 people to have something to bond over. I think that it's one thing for us all to hold space, like that's an amazing thing to do. And then I think it's the next level to build that under the level of community is being the connector in there also.
Yeah.
And then I'll add one more part to that. I think also saying names, doing introductions, being a connector. And the fourth part would probably be teaching people how to be a good community member within your doors, because how people show up in your space impacts everyone else's experience. So it's very important for you to get very clear on what your community is about and then teaching other people how to live that, because every person, how they show up within your community impacts everyone's experience. And that can have a ripple effect, whether it be positive or negative, on the way that your community grows. So just getting really clear on what that means for you and then teaching others how to go about that.
That's amazing. It reminds me of this incredible TED Talk that's only 3 minutes in length by this man named Derek Sivers. Has anyone seen this TED Talk? It's called How to Start a Movement. Okay, I'll definitely share, but basically he has this principle called the first follower. And the person who starts this community or this movement is called the lone nut. We're all kind of like the lone nuts, the crazy people who just like have a fantastical idea and we just are care bears. We just want everyone to come together and it's just in us. But the important thing, what you said, Cassie, is teaching them, the others, the first followers, the quote unquote, the dance. And so when you make the first person who's listening to what you're doing feel safe and heard and good, you've got to teach them how to do the dance that you're dancing. And then that first follower becomes the validator to then more people coming in. And so it's not the lone nut, the person that brings the value. It's actually the first follower. So if you all could think about your first follower or your first people that are like, okay, if Migs is going out and going for a run, who's that first person that says, I'm in, I'm beside you, right? Adam, who's that person that's like, I'm right by your side, your right-hand man, gal, whoever that is, that's the person that makes what you do of extreme value. And I'll definitely share that. It's an incredible TED Talk. I remember it all the time. And it's so wild to see him do a play-by-play of this, what I'm discussing in a concert. But anyways, first follower, teaching people the dance. Adam, would you like to share?
Yeah, the just like beautiful reflections from everybody. It's like I'm just getting so inspired listening to everyone. It's really lightened me up a lot. And the one that I really want to bring forth that certainly resonates with me deeply is just vulnerability. It's especially when we're in these positions as leaders, we feel like we need to carry the torch with like strength and confidence all the time, and you're really like holding the vibe for yourself and your community. That sometimes the most powerful things, in my experience, has actually been that asking for help, or that demonstration of just, again, authentic vulnerability when, you know, I don't have it all together and I can't be the strong leader that people expect me to be. And there's this concept of permission leadership that I really resonate with, insofar as by being vulnerable, by being who we truly are, we give permission to others to do the same. And that's, again, one of these very gentle but powerful ways that I see community cultivated, where just by being authentic in all of our amplitude of emotions, whether it's that elated, powerful leader at the front, like bring the vibe up, or sometimes when we're not at our best and actually need to reach out to a friend and ask for help. It's, for me at least, as like a man that always feels like he needs to have his shit together, it's like the hardest thing, but the truest demonstration of strength I've realized is that, hey man, like I can't do this on my own. I need help. And the amount of impact I've seen others realize from doing that for the first time even has just been profound, and something I try to practice frequently. Of, I can't do it all on my own. I don't feel the best, and I don't have my shit together. So please help me. And it feels so good when that person you ask says, it's my pleasure, to really feel supported. And that's just another part of community that feels something like I almost always wanted in my life, but I didn't realize until I had it, was people that you can just ask for help from, and when they're happy to give it to you. And that's like one of those, like, just like a core pillar of what all this means to me.
Thank you. That's so resonant. And I hope that with more of these gatherings that we, all of us on the screen, feel that we can be vulnerable and can ask each other for help. A big part of 2.0 Next Level is cross-pollination. And it's to be able to network with each other and do it from a place of authenticity and reach. I think that's part of why I wanted to bring all of us together, is because community leaders need support too. Who's taking care of the leader, you know? And fellow leaders know it true and true because you walk the talk and you have that role. So because you know what it's like, when we have that opportunity to just reach out, let's do it. I wanted to shift gears and talk about how we continue to maintain community when things kind of go a little bit curvebally. Have you had any moments where your community has, I won't say like backfired, but any like tough situations? Like, what are some common problems or issues that happen in community or communities? Miranda?
This is a funny one because I feel like, again, like thinking about social media and the control I have for the authenticity. During COVID, I was in a not so great relationship, and my team would start calling me out on like patterns of my social media, and they started seeing when I would like black out, wouldn't post, wouldn't do anything. As soon as I'm not posting, if I'm not doing stories, if I'm not doing at minimum stories, but some posts or asking questions, we're not making money. That means that contractors are not getting paid. And so they would ask me what's going on. And they could literally pick out the dates when we would have arguments. And when I am in like a fight with somebody or an argument with my partner, I just cannot function. I shut down. It breaks my heart. I don't want to be this voice on social media trying to be positive Polly when I'm crying. Fast forward to post-COVID, I lost my dad and had a breakup and had to sell my family home pretty much all within the same month. And I still had to pay my team. I still had to show up on social media. I still had to take client calls. And the only thing that I could have done instead of going all like blackout and not show up is at least say, I'm dealing with this anxiety. I'm not sleeping. I'm not eating. This is how I'm going to take care of myself. This is what I'm going to do for my nervous system. I am bawling my eyes out. I have no appetite. This is the reaction that's happening in my system. This is the chemical reaction with my blood sugar. Like all I can do is just explain. And then just show and tell and self-serve. So I would say like I'm super proud of myself now where I can show up still in that way. Maybe I'm not describing everything that's happening and explaining the breakup and explaining that my dad passed, but I'm explaining the reaction. My nervous system shot, can't sleep, can't eat, versus before I would just completely shut down, all black, nothing. So that's been my one way, like when shit hits the fan, sorry, I'm swearing, I really like to swear, that when it hits the fan, that this is how I'm going to show up. And it might not value maybe the person that I'm arguing with. Nobody knows who I'm arguing with or breaking up with, but everybody, that's when I have been getting such a crazy response like, hey, I saw that you posted this, or you went to Othership. Do you know if I can get a class? What class do you recommend? And I would explain that, and I would go to some Othership classes and there would be a bunch of Peer Lab babes that would be in there. And that was the craziest thing because I probably know their stories, they know my story, and we're all just like in there screaming together. Or it might be we're all going to Myo Detox and we're getting some pelvic floor therapy or something to support our hips or our jaw because of how we've been reacting and dealing. So it's that's been a really cool thing of just trying to still focus on that connection and suggestion, but not going blackout. That's a big deal for me.
Especially if you are the brand, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a very, very tough thing. Some of us have brands where you are the champion of it and you were the face of it. And there's some that have you could say the privilege or luxury to not be, but anyone else who Cassie, All Day Fit, you are the face of your brand. What is that pressure like? Can you jump in on what Miranda's talking about too? Or anyone else?
I think, yeah. I mean, there's definitely pressure, but like bringing it also, in my experience, like back to, Brianna's sharing how vulnerable she was and Adam's using the word vulnerability. Like we've built community by being real humans. So as much as there is pressure, I feel like the more like real and raw and honest I am with my community, as long as I don't want to say it like works to your advantage because it's like not like a business move. It's just like it's way more work if you have to try to like cover it up or like pretend something's not happening in your life. Whereas like the people who you're surrounded by with are like there in your court as much as like you're there in their court.
Yeah. The team aspect, right? Even if you are the face, you probably are bolstered by the team and you're only as strong as your team, right? So yeah. Migs? Mute.
My first time using Google. Now I'm playing. I'm just gonna kind of piggyback on what Cassie was saying. I think even though you're leading the community, it's a mutually beneficial relationship that you have with your community. I think as much as they're showing up for you and to get out what you're getting, you showing up, I think you're still getting something from them the same way. I know I could kind of relate to Miranda where last year things kind of went a little bit unplanned and upside down, just in my personal life where I had to go through a surgery, and the ability of not being able to work out the first like 2 weeks was driving me insane. And then the next month, my grandmother passed away. And it was a little crazy because the same day I had an event that I had to do. And I was at the hospital wondering when it happened. And I know my parents were like, "Oh, you should just like tell them you don't gotta do it." And the coordinators were like, "Oh, you don't have to worry about coming." But I don't know, something for me, it felt, it'll feel good for me to kind of still go and do it. It helped uplift me. I think that my grandmother would have wanted me to do it. And in those moments, I was able to kind of just be vulnerable and, tell people, this is how I'm dealing with it. This is what I'm feeling. I don't know everybody's personal story or what everybody's dealing with, but, just because you see us smiling all the time or leading or standing up on a podium, it doesn't mean that life's always sweet. It just means that we're willing to work through it, show up, and be here and work through it together. So I think just always kind of being raw and authentic and being yourself and, whatever those emotions may seem, it was a little bit bittersweet because I did the whole run. I'm super happy, super happy, super happy. And then right after the run's done and I'm done doing my job and hyping everybody up, I had to kind of like walk away for a second because that's where the emotions kind of kicked in. But I think the community aspect, it's mutually beneficial having people there for you and you're there for them and you don't even know it. So yeah, that's my piece.
Thank you for that. Kind of leads into a question that I was curious about for all of you is, as if you were giving advice to other community leaders or those that are coming up and finding a role in their community as leaders, what are some tips that you would provide young leaders for how to manage these like ups and downs and having to show, a pretty face, or how to be vulnerable as like a skill? What are some tips that you would provide, again, a young leader in terms of how to do what you do really well and been doing for a while now? Adam?
Yeah, a lot of, and it kind of even dovetails from the last part, which is, especially when conflicts do inevitably arise, is coming back to core values and coming back to being in service. I see a lot of these issues do arise when it is becomes ego-based and when there becomes an I in front of the community instead of putting the people first. That's when we start to see these, agendas or egos, which aren't necessarily coming from the bad place, but when it's like someone's idea versus another's, and then the compromise leaves the people that are actually trying to be served in a poor place, that's when you failed. And so, like, really at the core of this is always about being in service to, I think was that Miranda's point at the very start of this, that as long as you can keep coming back to, this is not about me, it's always about the people, that can always be that anchor to come back to decision making that I constantly find myself checking in on when, especially when I am in collaboration, where it's like head start to butt and these like awkward things come up, and we have to just come back and realize, hey, like I was wrong or you were wrong, or we're both wrong, but at the end of the day, the best decision has to be in that service, and just that humility that comes with being able to stand back in the wake of something that's of more benefit to arise.
I know that Miranda raised her hand, but I had a question for Celia. Because you're like a space holder for other professionals, personal trainers and coaches, how do you facilitate this new idea of like fitness co-working amongst all your fellow trainers? Are you like stepping in when there's sometimes like a little bit of miscommunication? Like, what is your role at your facility?
Well, I have the way that I approach it is from a top-down point perspective. So I really practice what I preach in terms of the core values that are important for me and this community that I'm trying to foster is what I try to promote through our community through the actions I try to display, from having conversations to them about, you want to talk about your business model, like let's grab a coffee. Let's just talk about it for 5 to 10 minutes. And then because I've done that with them, they'll probably go out of their way to potentially a new coach who's coming in who might have a question. They'd be more open to also helping answer that question. So the way that I approach it is from a top-down approach. It starts with me. I'm the one to kind of set the tone. And because they see what I actively do every day to kind of help them with everything that they want to try to achieve, I really think that it carries through them. And then they, in turn, do that themselves for the other coaches around them.
Yeah, being proactive, right? Sometimes like you don't have to wait for a problem to occur before acting, but to act, right? I always use the dig the well before you're thirsty. And I'm gonna jump to Miranda, but I also wanted to hear from Quentin because you specialize in youth and you foster and cultivate like lots of young talent, and I wanted to ask you about how you role model and how they receive your role modeling, your leadership.
Yeah, thank you. What Adam said really resonated with me. Some of the best leaders that I know lead from behind, right? It's about, they're the best. They're actually really good followers. They know what it feels like to be in the mix. It isn't about them being on top, really. It's about them sort of, like I said, leading from behind. Those are the people that I sort of look up to. So that's one of the things I like to lean into. Like I like to be right in there with the kids that I work with, that I volunteer with, and to relate. I can relate to the kids that I work with, just because of how I grew up. So there's that element. Yeah. I would say leading from behind. I think when you talk about leaders, whenever there's that flag that Adam pointed to of the ego, I sort of step away. And I can't relate to Miranda. And I love that you included me in this millennial conversation. When I heard that, I was like, oh, stop. But I'm old school and I suck at Instagram. Like I exist in real life. All the community places and spaces that I exist in, I'm in real life first and foremost. That's my priority. Then if people are lucky, I have time, maybe it's a week later, I'll share a little bit of what happened in real life with the world. And so people on social media get this really small window and look into something that happened in real life. And for me, that increases the value of what happens in real life. And so, and that's like you said it, it's a privilege. Because when I was listening to Miranda, I was like, oh my gosh, like knowing that your income is reliant on you showing up despite of how you feel, that is such a difficult place to be in, because you want to just be able to feel what you feel. So yeah, like for me, real life first, being in the moment with the people that I'm with, leading from behind. That's sort of how I approach it.
Love it. Yeah. Miranda, do you want to chat?
I'm super curious to know what Cassie's gonna say. But biggest thing to support community, I think it's really just, there's no gatekeeping. You are sharing everything where you can. And being in a city of Toronto and still being online, I think that there's a lot of people that look at different brands, or let's say for other people that are in your fitness industry, who do you see as a competitor? And can you see that there's enough space for everyone, and that you don't need to fight for your spot, that people are coming to you for a reason, for how you've broken things down? So that's really the only way that I've managed to stay in my own lane, because I'm not a trailblazer in my industry for hormonal health. There's people that have written books and who are also doctors as well too. and I'm just a hormone nutritionist, and I have a doctor on my team, but like we are still starting from scratch in comparison to them. But people like how we word things and say things and explain things, and we use a lot of stupid metaphors, like referring to car metaphors as like our jam. And we've just acknowledged through explanation that there's space for everyone. There's no competition.
Yep.
And to share. Yeah.
The mindset is huge for all of us to have, like, that growth and abundance mindset is a huge skill. Small things like practicing loving kindness, meditation, sending love to everyone that's around you, whether it's your enemies, competitors, and seeing them as people that actually make you better. It's such a tough game if you just get swallowed into your own ego and into the game. Being able to release valve and step away, and even having those conversations with each other is very, very helpful. Yeah, so it's how we frame things is really key.
I actually have another question.
Yeah,
and this is something that like we can share later, but I'm just super curious if there's anyone that could give me advice about starting more community in person and getting offline. If there's like anything that comes to mind for you, I would love to know.
Yeah, absolutely. It was I don't know if Migsy wanted to chat about the stuff, and then we can move into the world of like hybrid communities in real life versus like online, like tips for that. So Migs, you want to jump in on previous stuff?
Oh, I was just gonna big up, like I appreciate everything that Miranda said, and I want to big up Q, because he's an example of leading from behind, like he said. In any situation, any room that I've been in with Q, he makes every single person in the room seen. And I mean, I'm not just talking about in Toronto. I've been in LA, I've been in Vegas with them, and it's just like people just gravitate to him, and he's able to. I don't know how he remembers everybody's names, but it's honestly inspirational. I love that, and just as Miranda was pointing out, just people not gatekeeping anymore. I know pretty much everybody on this call. I just met Celia, so nice to meet you. But I've known Cassie since university. When I came into the fitness stuff, she's always been there supporting me. Any questions I've had, she reached out, hit me back, gave me tips. Q, I met, I was doing a marathon in the middle of the pandemic, and he hit me up on Instagram, said, "Oh, this is what you're doing? All right, I'm going to pop out and say what up." And I never met him, but I think there's a beautiful transition that's happening where people are very open, and as long as we lead with just love and having abundance and an open mindedness, it goes a long way. And even if people don't do it, you just being the example of it, it'll change people's minds.
Very nice. Shifting to Miranda's question, how are we currently navigating this hybrid world of online and in person? How are you currently conducting your businesses in this hybrid world? Is there like a secret sauce to it? Anyone want to talk about just the overall like hybrid thing? Is it a tool? Is it like, oh my God, I mean, right now, for instance, us gathering tonight online, I think is great. We're in the comfort of our own home. There's the higher potential to say yes when it's in the comfort of your home. If I were to say, hey, we're all meeting at this place in person, I mean, show of hands, how many people probably couldn't have made it, right? So there's pros and cons to the hybrid world that we live in. And I love in person. I wanted to do in real life, but I don't know I don't want to say if we're ready for that yet, because we have this option for for online meeting. So I'm kind of also in this place of like, okay, where are we going with this? How can we continue to leverage? And I think I'm just kind of experiencing it now. But in 2025, or throughout the rest of this year, it would be nice to meet in person too. So any thoughts on the hybrid world of fostering and maintaining community and conducting your business? Yes, Adam.
Yeah, I have like a million thoughts on this because it's funny. I'm like very much not doing anything in the digital world because I'm just like way more hyper focused on the IRL. So Miranda, invitation to like drop in like one-to-one after, and I can totally share pretty much like playbooks on how I execute on IRL experiences. Because what I do think lies at the core of community is finding belonging and sort of absolving ourselves of loneliness of the different parts of ourselves that just don't get the opportunity to be seen. And online is great because we have that accessibility to, like you said, Julian, jump on right now and be in the convenience of it. But I really think like connection is something that we are entitled to, but almost we need to meet all of ourselves halfway in terms of that showing up, where if this wasn't in person, that connection I'd feel with all of you would be that much deeper because we all put in that effort to actually come together and be there and show. Like I really believe that one of the greatest gifts we can ever give someone is our presence. And if I put in that much more effort to travel to give you my presence, that's actually one of the greatest gifts I can offer someone. And to come back to Miranda's question on like, how do you do it? Well, it's like you give people a reason. And a lot of the reasons I think people want to come together is just to find common parts that we have in common to share and celebrate in. Where it's like you said, when you put that call out to your community when you're going through a tough time and find yourself in another sub class with a bunch of your ladies, it's like maybe they'll just show like I'm also a woman that goes through grief, and how beautiful it would be to celebrate and sharing that, you know, be a tough emotion with others. Even all of us being here right now, whether it was, you know, in person or online, it's like we're all here together because we share that common theme of community. So it's always like the first thing that I look at is what's this common part that we're all looking to amplify within ourselves. And then it's like pick a venue and then like spice it up. And I've got a whole like that's pretty much what I do for a living now. So I said drop in more with anybody. Actually, that invitation is open to that wants to do more in-person events. It's something I'm passionate about.
For sure. You are the master at that. Just the way that Adam creates those like these great invitations, the program platform that he uses to help just like make the invitation an experience is really cool. So it's just very, very well done, polished, super intentional from the start to the finish, and then the follow-up to Adam's events. Highly recommend you check out one of Adam's events when he puts it on. It's really, really a special experience. That goes to also, because we have this option online, does that mean we have to go above and beyond to sell the in-person stuff? Right? Like, do we have to make it even more like grandiose that, oh, you're missing out, this is going to be an amazing thing, we put in a lot of effort into this thing, and that, you know, like where do we find the, you know, the boundaries of how much do we have to compare those two things? Anyone want to share?
I think that brings up some interesting stuff too, because it's sort of like, it's like I'm throwing a birthday party, and if I show up and nobody shows up, there's like that embarrassment too. Like there's a lot of risk that gets put out when like, and like I honor all of you for like doing what you're doing, because it's like we're all putting ourselves out there being like, hey, here's what I'm doing, hope you can come. And it's like online, it's a bit less like, I don't know, to me, maybe this is projecting, but like it feels like there's less risk put out, whereas like you rent a venue and you put all these things into it, and there's sort of like capital even tied up. Yeah, but that's where it's like, I don't know, some of like the fun of it comes from, where if there's like a bit of hustle, of like there's an energy that comes behind all of it that people do respond to. I deeply believe in like those laws of our energies, of what we put out gets responded back, and there's so much fun in that creative process that people, I really do see respond to.
Yeah, there's a self-belief that's even stronger, because it hurts rejection when someone doesn't show up. Even if like 20 people show up and that one person that you wanted didn't show up, you like feel rejected and you kind of feel pissed. You're like, what the hell? So you focus on that. But how do we get over that hump? And I think it's getting harder and harder because there's the URL option now, that more and more people are like, you know what? I have to babysit the kids tonight, or I have this event, or I have to get to bed early. There's so many other things that forces you to like really push it. But yeah, Migs, do you want to share? Talk about same stuff?
Well, I think for me and Miranda, if you have an online platform, I think your following and your community would jump at the opportunity to actually meet you in person and have a conversation with you in person, because they're connected with you through online, but now they get the opportunity to see you face to face, connect, shake your hand, see you actually laugh in real time and be like, oh, this is not pre-recorded. You know what I mean? And I know there's always an element, like just coming from an event planning background, that, maybe people won't show up. So don't create crazy expectations for yourself, because at the end of the day, if one person shows up, like I said before, and you change that one person's life, that's going to go a lot further than 100 people that just wanted to post something on Instagram and say that they were there, right? So just, start smaller, see what happens, lean on the relationships that you have. Like, I know everybody on this call is really dope. Lean on it. If you want people to come out, you have something that I know for sure I'm not offering. So, but I could put it out to my community and they might not even know that it's there, right? So you could collab with somebody, maybe do a work on an info session, or you put on your own session and say, hey, this is open to you. Come out, come check it out. So I think you just gotta don't create crazy expectations for yourself. Just think about the journey of what it is and the opportunity that you're presenting people to actually see you and ask you questions in real time.
You don't want to come talk about periods?
I would love to. I think you should do one for men.
Actually, though, you guys have no idea how much you would benefit from it. It's wild.
I mean, we could talk. We could do a men's period talk.
I think that would be great.
I'm open to it.
It's so much fun. I will go out for dinner with a bunch of my guy friends and they just bring out their phones and they're all leaning in and they're all taking notes, and it's the cutest thing. I love it. I love talking to guys about this.
It's so critical because a lot of us do group fitness or in group, and how many women are in group fitness? Like the majority, at least in my world at Equinox and Sweat and Tonic. And when I drop something about, like, hey, is everyone ovulating around? Because everyone's crushing it.
That's so funny. But even if you were to think about how many people either quit or miss out or have to cancel a session or whatever that may be because of their cycle, well, why aren't you training around their cycle? And it's basically like you're front loading and back loading around their cycle, but then understanding that there's so much more that you can do, especially if they have PCOS or irregular cycles. Like, there's so much that you can do in your programming for it, which is only going to help your business. But we're just thinking like this is an icky, yucky topic when it could literally benefit you in multiple ways. Like, there's Jamie from Equinox who is now understanding PCOS, which is like irregular cycles, major weight gain, imbalanced blood sugar levels, and he's understanding how to train people around this, and his business has just been booming since.
That's huge. I feel like you could definitely be a guest speaker at one of Adam's men's events.
Oh my god, that'd be the best.
That would be a pretty cool collab. Quentin, Q.
Yeah, one thing that Mig said hit for me really hard, and he had said it earlier. He said, "I'm going out for a run, and even if one person comes out, you know what I mean, we're gonna get a run in." And then he doubled down just now, saying, think of the impact of that one person. And I think social media at some point has tricked us into putting value on numbers, KPIs. And I get it. If that's your income, it matters how many people engage in a post. But for me, and for Migs and for people that exist in real life, since we're trying to merge these two worlds, to me, the value is in one person. And I would rather have one person cooking with me in the kitchen at Ubuntu and have a blast with them in the same way that Migs would go for a run with that person and really connect, than have 100 people that are just there to take selfies and kind of like post online, and they're not really engaged in the community or understanding the purpose. So I, on the opposite side of the spectrum, value so much what can happen when you connect or change just one person's life. And for Migs, what he saw was one person turned to two, two turned to three, and next thing you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and I'm watching my phone saying, how the hell does this guy have 100 people outside when we're supposed to be locked down? And the numbers take care of themselves. If you're doing something impactful, if you're changing one person's life, then one will turn to two, and two will turn to 100 before you know it.
Yeah, that's what a sensational, amazing story. I was actually thinking when Quentin was saying that he doesn't really pop onto social media, and only the rare times that he does, but most of his time, like let's say 80-20 rule, 80% person and then 20% online. Miranda's like kind of the opposite. And it just dawned upon me, like the law of opposites. It's like, yeah, when you guys were saying, why don't you just do an in-person thing, Miranda, it's like, man, how many people would just love to hug you who've never met you before, right? Of course, depending on your international, if it's hard, like people will have to fly in, but it just seems like it's yeah, the answer is there. So yeah. I wanted to shift into how do you see stuff like this, a gathering of leaders, of thought leaders. How do you see this platform or tool as a way to maybe impact some of our current social issues? And I think we've already started to get into that with like showing up at each other's stuff and supporting each other's things. I think that naturally will happen. We just, and it starts with the invitation, right? Like Adam inviting, hey guys, you want to come to this event? I think that in itself is really powerful and important. But how do you see gatherings like this continuing to bridge these gaps and solve larger issues? You want to jump on that question? Like, where do we go from here as a community of leaders? Adam?
I think it starts with you actually, where it is this ongoing nurturance.
Okay.
Whereas like it's always like that. It's like there's like the microcosm of this macrocosm where excuse me, issues might come up, but we might not have those platforms to discourse them. Whereas you've gone all meta on us now and created a community of community leaders. So it's like, how does the fallout from this happen in the same way if it was even a real life event where it's, you know, we have our little like group chat. Is that something that needs ongoing nurturing where this becomes that safe container for us to come to and ask for help? It's like, hey, this thing came up in my crew. I don't know what to do about it. So, excuse me. So it's like, it really is that facilitator that you have now become that continues to nurture this community.
Cool.
So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Cass?
I'll do that too. Thank you for doing this. As someone who travels a lot out of Canada to go find other communities of leaders, I think it's like something I have always felt is really missing in Toronto. And I was recently sitting at a dinner with Josh, the founder of Impact Kitchen, and Nick, the founder of Unbounded. And they curated a table of also community leaders. It was the first time that I felt a table of different leaders in this industry that come together in a way that felt very collaborative since pre-pandemic. Because I feel like pre-pandemic, it was huge. And then I think the pandemic times, like obviously like lots of great things came with it and lots of challenges came with it and things have just been very different. So it's something as simple as a group chat, whether if that's like on WhatsApp or Instagram, even just to like bring like-minded people together. Because even like Julian, if like from a fitness space 10 years, not 10 years ago, what's the pandemic, 5 years ago, there have been so many new people who have come up who are doing amazing things. And I think sometimes on social, it's like so easy to get lost in what's being posted. Like like I might miss something in Meg's post or Adam post. So it's really cool, or anyone on this call. It's really cool to be able to have a platform or a chat where we can share what's going on, invite one another, and like ask questions and like be vulnerable with. I think sometimes it's very easy as an entrepreneur and as a community leader to like just spend all my time within All Day Fit because I love them so much. But it's also so important to like find community outside of our community as well.
Yeah, I see that it's like I think it's healthy for us to talk, as like if we scope out on the industry at large, you have certifying bodies that bring people together, like for example, like Canfit Pro, right? And the intention is education, it's leveling up, getting skill sharing from those world leaders, and everyone sort of digests that innovation and that new information. But I found those gatherings to be very valuable because I get to see people out of their own tribes, out of their own little universes, and we get to mix and mingle and catch up on a personal level. That was one of the things that actually prompted 2.0. Is I actually look forward to bumping into people in the hallway almost sometimes more than actually sitting in a lecture, and having talks that we're like, oh my God, we missed this lecture from this person that we wanted to hear from. But it was so nice to just catch up on that level. So beyond the seeing each other, being vulnerable, and just asking like, hey, how's life? I think there's different variations of things we could discuss and chat about. So like networking, so different intentions, networking with each other, bringing each other to different events, asking for help, knowing that that person's a specialist in this and you need some of that help, reaching out and knowing that it's okay, like good, like I'm not going to charge you for my time, that kind of thing. I think that when we can put these connections at the forefront and know that we're coming at it as a community at large, I think that just builds a greater bond beyond Toronto, maybe even nationally. I do want to continue to take what we're doing here and start to bridge the gap to other cities. But first, it's got to start local and sort of build up from there. So I agree with you, Adam. I'm going to continue to sit with a lot of the percolating ideas and float around what if the next intentions are for what this gathering of leaders can do. But yeah, any other thoughts on what a gathering of leaders can bring us? Quentin or Celia? Yeah.
So similar to Cassie, I travel a lot as well. And I think Toronto is a great city that has a lot of potential, but as industry leaders, I think we could come together a little bit more to compete more on a global level. There's a lot of innovation that comes from Toronto and Canada in general. And I think our ability to be able to compete on a global market has not been tapped into yet. And if we can come together to figure out how to leverage what we have here in Canada to compete more into North American markets, European markets, we have great potential to bring whatever we're doing into these international markets. And I can't see why it wouldn't be possible. It's just more, I think, these kind of conversations need to come about to just let us try to tap into what we know that's bigger outside of Toronto, outside of Canada, and think about on a global scale.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that came to mind was like as Torontonians, we're known for being multicultural. Like that is an asset. What are the core values of Toronto? What are the strengths that we have as a city? Maybe not Toronto Raptors this year, but maybe like a couple of years ago, we were definitely all flexing that. But that's the stuff that brings us together, that really bonds us, and that gives us this pride, this almost like patriotism, but for our city. Those are the things that we can be really proud of. And when we get to the point where, for example, this is in the world of like modern bathhouses with Othership, Arc, Alter, all these things that are popping up. At first, when I started working with Arc, there was a bit of Julian and Othership, and now moving to Arc. What's going on? But I had this like flip when I started to realize, and I started to say things to the coaches that I was recruiting and saying, you know what? Othership has paved the way for this style of coming together, this gathering space. And we owe it to them for really pushing it and making it a thing. And I see not necessarily competitors, but like brothers and sisters. They're like the older brother sister of this vertical in the world of wellness. And they've opened in New York City, right? And they're now going international. And so it's like they're a homegrown company that has risen and represents us on that level too. So I'm like, when you see competition rise, I think when each of us gets to a place, I think it's important to like root for them as well. Of course, if it lines.
Can I add a note to that, Julian?
Yeah, sure.
I was just in New York a couple weeks ago. Like it was the weekend after Othership opened, and everyone was like, "You're from Toronto? Have you heard about Othership?" And it made me so proud to be from Toronto, to like have a company in the health and wellness space, like be there and be known. It was just like the best, like when one of us rises and does well, like we all rise and do well.
Yep, exactly. So I guess that's definitely the fact that we have to support each other for sure. Quinn, were you gonna say something? Q? No? Celia?
I was trying to heart Cassie's comment, but I was slow. I couldn't find. It wasn't quick enough. I should have just old school.
Yeah, I see a lot of this stuff that we're doing, that I'm doing right here with 2.0 as incubation. Where my mind goes towards is thought leadership. And what I'm hoping for in 2025 is as I start to branch out to international projects, I'd love for us to be some sort of collective agency, and consult on an international scale. And so part of my work is not just to bring us together, which I think is very, very important, and align, but also bring that attention to Toronto. And that's sort of my mission for 2025, as I kind of explore as a world traveler. And I think when everyone else goes out and travels the world and has international touch points, I think it's important for us to bring the attention, the spotlight to Toronto and say, hey, just like Sally was saying, like we are capable and we have, the talent to really rise up and lead on a much, I guess you could say, like, again, multicultural, multifaceted. We have the roots, the seeds, the growing up, the nature, and the nurturing to share a much more uniting community. We all believe in community, and I think that that's a very powerful message to countries that are sort of like subdivided and not really understanding how they can cross-pollinate. I think we can really teach a lot of places in this world how to do this kind of stuff. Because I don't know, maybe I'm assuming, but I'm sure there's some places around the world who'd be like, wow, these guys are like top people and they're all coming together to have a talk. This is crazy. And I think some people wouldn't even imagine speaking to their quote unquote competitors. So I think this is, again, very, very special, and it's an example of a lot of promise. I love the idea of the dinners. I think I'd like to host something like that. There was a guy who was putting out these special dinners, and it really helped network people. I think it was dinners for billionaires or something like that. But the idea came across and the concept really worked well to network each other. I saw a comment, Vinny and Roy. Yeah, I gotta connect with them for sure. If you'd like to connect me, that would be great too.
Totally. I almost envision like Soho House round table vibes. We're all sitting together facing one another. Not panel, but like round table. You guys can all come over, we can have dinner. But I think there's value in us all facing each other and having this discussion. Not to break the rules and not raise my hand, but
for sure. So the geometry of stuff can get pretty meta too. Instead of a rectangle table where there's a head, circle. That's why I call this like a roundtable discussion. We're coming to the end of time. I wanted to give everyone just that last moment to share final thoughts on community. And if you can piggyback, is there on your own idea or your own final words on maybe a discussion topic for future gatherings? Maybe we can start on top left of my screen. I've got Q, Quentin. Do you want to share any final words and future discussion?
Grateful for the opportunity to share space with all of these superheroes. So thank you for having me, Julian. And future discussions, I mean, sometimes I can't even think of an actual topic, to be honest. I think when you put people in the room, sometimes what bubbles to the surface is magic in and of itself. But I'm certainly excited to see where the next chapters take us.
Awesome. Celia? You're muted.
Okay, here we go. Okay. No, super grateful to be with all of you all. Thank you, Julian, for including me in the conversation. But I mean, just on what everybody's saying, just it's a great topic and something that I really resonates with me is continuing to innovate in an industry that has been kind of doing the same thing for about 100 years. And trying to push the dial forward in terms of how can we do things differently, make things more interesting, and recruit people to get health and wellness different.
Sorry, you skipped up on the last little bit. What did you say?
I was just saying to kind of recruit people to look at health and wellness in a different light through the innovation that we're to create.
Well, you host a space that brings people together that network and co-work together. So I hope that PlaceMade continues to grow and helps people connect on that in-person level. I think that's really, really powerful. I think for me, just to reflect on being in a space, not PlaceMade, similar training lane, I get to hang with Cassie and her crew whenever I bring clients there, and it's been a really nice, it's like home away from home, because I get to chit chat, talk shop, and then see other trainers coach and see what their methodologies are, and it's really inspiring. And of course we skill share and we borrow from each other. So I think just being in real life, in person, in the same space indirectly is really powerful too. We don't have to always be like, room, hi. You know, we can just be in each other's company, and that presence is very special. Cassie? Closing words and thoughts on future discussion topics?
Future discussion topics I think would be cool is like say we're talking about community, but how to build a team or something a long team. I think I think a lot of us start as one entrepreneur or one leader, but definitely like lifting those others up who help us do the same. Topic I feel very strongly about. That's what comes to mind.
Okay. Thank you. Great.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Miranda?
I'm not 100% sure. I think about, I guess, like the tactic part of it. Like, yes, we're all here to make impact and help others, but we also got to eat too. So how are we building our businesses, and what is a sales tactic, or how is your sales method changed pre-COVID, during, now post-COVID? How is your tactic, or like what is your tactic on social media? Like, I think these are just all great things that we can kind of take from one another and build out our own, but kind of sharing that transparency in the business side, which everybody can keep in their tightly knit little box of secrets, which I think is great and will still always hold value. But if we keep in mind that we are, yes, there's competition, but we're also not each other's competitors, that there's space for all of us, there's space for all of us to succeed, I think that could be a cool business side to kind of share.
Cool. That definitely brings me sort of like my homework is hopefully to create some sort of open source online service that all professionals like you guys can connect to. And if you have a question about like, how do I go about building an incredible IRL gathering, an event, and then someone in the community like Adam would just write up like, oh, here's like my playbook, boom, right? Like, this is the open source non-gatekeeping way to help all of us level up, is this free information sharing. And then another thing to add to that is like, oh, if you want, you can come to my event and you can see and experience it in real life. That's the fastest way of learning. So I think that's something that I definitely would like to create for next year as my homework. Adam, closing words, discussion topics?
No, just like, again, open expression of gratitude for starting this forum. And I think like if the community here is for the nurture, the stuff will naturally pop up. I really, yeah, to start to resonate with what Miranda started to chat about there. Like the community, like I mentioned and opened with, is like, it's like at the forefront, non-transactional, but then when we do walk in this gray area of like, yes, we're putting energy into it, and yeah, we got to eat. How do you do that with grace? How do you do that with intentionality in a way that doesn't compromise the service, but still allows the people that are putting their energy into it to bear the fruits of their labor in a way that feels good? If you know the answer, hit me up, because I'd love to know.
Definitely, I wouldn't say like necessarily a challenging topic, but it's probably something that we haven't really dove in that deep into. I think a lot of the unknowns that make us feel uncomfortable are just opportunities for us to dive a little deeper. And I think also the mindset of 2.0 is to not look inwards into our community for all the answers. I think part of the answers is exploring different sides of yourself and going to other industries like the food industry. Like, I've met so many amazing chefs through the Run Club the Food Runners, and just knowing what they do on how to manage the ins and outs of restaurant life is so fascinating. So the arts community, you know, the science community, so all different facets of who we are, I think we can really borrow from those industry/communities and bring them in. I think that's the Venn diagram of our lives, is the middle section of the intersection. That's when a lot of innovation happens. Migs, final words?
Well, first off, thanks for organizing this and bringing everybody together. Appreciate it. It's very insightful, and it's very rare that all of us could just, be in a room and just talk and just be open. I think a future topic would be a combination of what Cassie said and what Q mentioned, leading from behind and how to build up those around you. I think part of leading from behind is building up the people in your community. So I think just having a topic and a discussion about how to further do that and the ability to do that and some techniques that you can apply to building up others, which in turn is leading. So I think it'd be a really interesting topic to dive a little bit deeper into.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's always about sharing that information, and hopefully that this gathering has, I don't know if it's like if there was any ever walls, but oftentimes we put up these pretend walls because we don't necessarily feel like we have permission to like bother someone, especially a community leader who's probably super busy. So I hopefully that like makes these pretend walls that we have, it makes them more porous. And I hope that we all can see each other on the screen and smile and say like, hey, invitation's open, doors open, with this like 2.0 pass kind of thing. I wanted to say thank you to those who were sort of in on the conversation as flies on the wall. Thank you to Ashton, and I can't remember who else, Brew, for just showing up, and also David for being here. Julie was here earlier. And again, thank you all for saying yes. It's like asking a hard ask, knowing that I could easily be rejected, because you all are so busy, and I really, really am grateful for the time that you've dedicated, and of course the insights. The magic of this is something that I still continue to be in awe of. Like, what was that special sauce? What was that thing that said, yeah, okay, yeah? Was it because of me, because of who I am and how I've connected with you? Was it because of the cast and like, oh, so and so's coming, okay, for sure I'm coming now? Like, what was that ingredient for you? I think those answers will lead us to more gatherings, and eventually gatherings that are in person too. So I'm going to be investigating more of that stuff, and I'll probably do a follow-up with you all to ask what that is, and then start going down the question trail that Adam has asked, is like, how do you ask another leader of something like a favor while respecting the service that you're putting out, and doing it in equity and fairness too, right? So I know that all of this stuff is just like because we're awesome Care Bears and we love to spread our shine. But I know that there's only a limited amount of this too. So I really respect the time that you've dedicated. I'm not going to ask you next month to come, okay? But if you do want to join, you can definitely join. So yeah, so we have to sort of manage how much of us we're giving out and giving forward. And I really respect this time that you spent with me and everyone else. So thank you all so much. Closing off, may the force and flow be with you all.
Thanks, Julian.
Thank you all.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it all. Thank
Thank
you.
you guys.
Thanks, Julian. Appreciate it, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
See you guys.